right. So Jenny, if you just start and introduce yourself. All right, please.
Yeah, fine. So I'm Jenny Rivers. I'm the Director of Research and Development at Barts Health NHS Trust in London. We're a large NHS health and care provider based in North East London, and we work across 5 different hospital sites. I've been in my role at Barts Health for 2 years now, and really enjoying working with colleagues like Suthesh, who's joining me here today to talk a little bit about the research that we do and the opportunities that we see for research in Barts Health, but also in the UK.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And Sutek, would you mind introducing yourself,
Yeah,
please?
of course. Hi, I'm Suthesh, and I'm very excited to be on this podcast. I'm a clinical senior lecturer in haematology. If this podcast is listened to anyone else than the UK, that's an associate professor in haematology. And my interests are clinical patients. So I look after individuals with inherited bleeding and clotting disorders from cradle to grave. So we do pediatrics and adults. And my research focuses on improving the life of people with bleeding disorders, either by running clinical trials or by large data studies where we use genomic and large data sets to improve the life of individuals with bleeding disorders by early diagnosis or finding new ways of disease.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. An impressive backgrounds. So I might ask both of you, and Jenny, if you wanted to answer first, why is it important that we embed research and innovation into health and care?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So it's really important that we that the way that we treat patients now is based on research and evidence that's been generated. So we want to be at the forefront of being able to do that, so that we're giving our patients the latest innovations in treatment and in diagnosis and in thinking about the efficiency of the healthcare system. So it's really important that that research is embedded in the care that they provide. This isn't necessarily a separate option for patients. This is something that we do alongside our clinical practice to make sure that we're achieving better health outcomes for patients and our wider population.
Thank you. Sutesh?
I've been a fellow and then a registrar here at Barts Health for almost a decade now. And kind of small stories which have become big are really cool. So my predecessor, Professor Passy, John Passy, has been a pioneer in gene therapy. So gene therapy in bleeding disorders in hemophilia, the initial trials for gene therapy and hemophilia B were run here by him. And those trials have been part of the process through which now gene therapy is licensed in the NHS, but also other places to actually give to our patients. So you can see that journey from early studies to implementation into a healthcare system, and it's quite unique. That's unique because we've contributed to society and contributed to new treatments. It is unique because that means that our patients, I mean, I'm talking about our patients, but patients who are looked after by Barts Health have access, early on access to innovative therapies. But I think it's very important to know that we can't just, it's not some kind of, there's a doctor and a mad scientist and you do this. It's a massive operation that we can only do together and that's so great about where we are now. There are numerous new trials which have been able to open because of the speed of the team working on it. So yeah, we improve, and we are able to improve lives. But most importantly, we have patients who trust, not me, trust the system and the hospital, the brand so much that when we ask them for something, a new trial, a new drug, which might not directly benefit them, that they're willing to say yes. And that's a very brave step.
Indeed it is. That's very impressive. Thank you very much. So I might ask you now that what are the opportunities and how does the UK compare with its global peers?
Yeah, thanks. I'll start. So I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I'd say Suthesh probably is too, and that's probably why we work well together. The opportunity, I think, is the key word there, because there is huge opportunity in the UK. there is no doubt that we have slipped down in the rankings compared to our global peers in terms of clinical trials delivery in particular. And although we've seen some recovery of trials post-COVID, which is really encouraging, there's still a long way that we can go, particularly in terms of making sure that we're fast to set up, that we're efficient, and that we deliver what we say we can deliver, so that we attract that investment, particularly from global pharma. I think one of the really powerful things that we have here is our knowledge base and our science and our university system, and our incredibly talented and motivated researchers. And combining that with some of the infrastructure that we have across our health and care system, with some of the data that we have access to, really makes the opportunity so exciting for us. We have particular expertise in the UK in early phase trials, and that's still really strong. And that's something that we're passionate about at Barts Health. And we're looking at investing in facilities to be able to do more of that, and really engaging early and meaningfully with our patient population to be able to deliver those studies. But we have to be realistic too, that there are a lot of pressures in the system at the moment, and we think we need to make the most of those collaborations, particularly that Suthesh is talking about. We need to do this together with partners across the system.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Suthesh?
Yeah, so I think, so if we look at global, everything else except compared to the UK, I think one of the great things we have is good care. We can debate about that for all, and access to care, but that also means access to the NHS and a diversity of hospitals where we can do trials. Yes, at where we are, I'm very lucky that we can set up trials quickly, that we work very closely, and I'm allowed to work closely with sponsors and pharma companies to even start advising them on some of the novel agents and how we can then implement and put them here. One thing that I think is globally there's more and more interest is that, does a drug work for everyone, or does it only work for a section of the population? We are very fortunate that, for instance, if you look at genomic studies or other studies, we hit a specific demographics, because to participate in a study, you need to have time, you need to have means, you need to be able to work around a researcher or to be able to access the appointments. And that then sometimes means that not everyone in society gets the opportunity. With the cost of living crisis, people are worried about work, worried about how to get there. And that's something we really see also in our population. They might want to participate in research, but there are loads of things where there are barriers. And I think one of the things that we do well in the UK, but also at Barts, is that we make it easier. So as Jenny said, we have multiple hospitals where research takes place, so we try to do it as close to house as possible. We have people who can interpret it. We have people, I'm diverse, I guess, but we have a very diverse team of researchers and doctors, and that just gives that familiar feeling for people who would be thinking about research. And you can see that there is a need for diversity in research and research participants, because that means that the drugs are tested on a wider population, and we can show effectiveness for a wider population, or say, well, actually, this drug works better in population X, Y, or Z. So those are the things that I think are really good, and where we are really making strides. I'm involved in some of the machine learning and AI efforts globally, the access to data in the right way, with the right permissions, with the right regulations around it. I think UK is quite well in advanced in that field. So that's really good. Why not? Okay, because otherwise this will be some kind of everything is better in London. That's not the case. I think there are still barriers. There is always a concern how much pharma will invest in the UK, because what is the market like once the product is brought to market? Yes, but I also always think it is a big market, so that should not be forgotten. And also the kudos and respect and the kind of legacy the UK has in running innovative trials. That's not something that you can set up overnight. So there's a lot of knowledge and know-how, which is also important to be able to run these studies.
I think
Absolutely.
gonna just add that I think Suthesh is describing some of the benefits of research in a way that can't easily be measured in terms of metrics. And I think we need to find a good balance between, when we think about how well we're doing, how we measure that is in some of the things that Suthesh has mentioned, probably more than it is in some of the numbers. And we need to do both, because we need to know where we are. But I think anecdotally, we work with companies that want to come back and work with us again because they've worked with us before and it's been successful. And that to me is a really important measure of our success. We hosted a global delegation from a clinical research organisation the other day who had heard on the grapevine that the UK was doing better, more than they'd seen some of the data, and they wanted to come over. So there was enough of a drive in the stories and the impact for them to come and see what we were doing. And I think for me, it's really about balancing that so that we can be as open and as effective as possible.
I like your glass half full. Okay, that's fantastic. I like optimism. It fuels everything. So the NHS and healthcare systems across the world are facing a multitude of challenges, ranging from financial pressures to staff shortages and increased life expectancies, putting more pressure on healthcare systems. How does your research help address these challenges and these changes?
Do you want to start that one?
Yeah, so that's quite, Steve, it's quite a long question, but I think part of it I can definitely focus on, and that's about life expectancy, right? And increased life expectancy. Obviously, what we want is people to have a healthy life. Okay, so for instance, in Tower Hamlets, where the Royal London is based, life expectancy on average is, I believe, like 7 years less than if you were in another part of London. And that's because of loads of socio-economical factors. It's around pollution. It's also around the way that people present to their doctors, and delayed presentation and delayed diagnosis. So one of the things that we all are actively working on is earlier diagnosis and earlier intervention, and thereby more healthy life years. For instance, Professor Van Hill and Professor Feiner have set up this amazing cohort called Genes and Health, where they have permission from about 60,000 individuals from an East Asian background, from a Bengali background, to look at their healthcare data, to look at their genomic data, to understand disease better. Metabolic diseases, for instance, genomic traits, with an eye of intervening earlier to make them have healthier lives. That's one thing. Some of the research that I do myself is using the Barts data warehouse, or the Precision Health platform, which holds, with permission, records of 3.5 million, to run rule-based algorithms in those data records to identify ultra-rare disorders much earlier than a clinician would, because patients might have symptoms and go to different doctors. But those are ways of which we are trying to improve life. Yes, there are, a magnitude of financial pressures. That is true. And I look at Jenny and our leadership to guide us through that. But there's still a lot of opportunities, and participating in research takes away costs within the NHS. Partnering with pharma gives us also access to certain drugs at reduced cost, and also more and more partnering in large-scale research will enable some of this early work.
Okay, all right. I'm pleased that you mentioned you're in northeast London. So, Jenny?
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, I think for me the important thing about this is it's a team effort. There's no doubt that there are pressures, as you articulate, and this is about us creating a culture where staff are curious about the patients and the the treatments that they're offering. They want to ask questions. They want to encourage each other to be delivering cutting edge care. And that for me is about collaboration, and it's about leadership. And I think one of the things that we're both passionate about is a sort of evolution of that leadership being much more collaborative, much more open, and working across discipline boundaries and professional boundaries. And also we both have a scientific and clinical background, but that we bring something quite different to that leadership space in terms of the way that we interact with our teams. And that gives us the opportunity to encourage others to come and join us on the research bus, really, as part of that that bigger system picture. And for us, that's really exciting. It's a core part of addressing the challenges. It's not something that we're trying to add on to what's already an overwhelming, overwhelming situation within health and care.
Absolutely, problems are there to be solved.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think there won't be
Go on.
ever, sorry, I don't think there will be ever enough money to do everything everyone always wants to do. And it's trying to find the ways to, to enable that. I think that's just how the world works, unfortunately.
Okay, so you've mentioned that you're in Northeast London, and I think that's quite an exciting part of the world for me. I am very interested in what that means for your research. I mean, you've got the opportunity with different cohorts, different strains of population, different genetic pools and different conditions. But I mean, perhaps obtaining real world evidence and perhaps obtaining patient reported outcomes might also be important to you in that silo. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so no, definitely. So as I said before, outcomes from certain interventions can be very different. My background is in genomics. There are variants which have different effects in different backgrounds, and as a simple example, which springs to my mind is I have an interest, a long-standing interest in a type of blood cell called the blood platelets. And the blood platelets, they clump together and they form your first response to a bleed. Blood platelets are very small. You can look at them with the microscope, and there are genetic drivers for count, function, and if you have mutations in these genes, then you are more at risk of having a platelet disorder, an inherited platelet disorder. Now, in the process of identifying if somebody has a mutation that counts, we look at the frequency of that mutation in the general population. There are mutations in a very specific gene called GFI1 beta, which are more common in people of Southeast Asian ancestry and rare in people of Caucasian ancestry. If I didn't have that knowledge about the difference in frequency of this mutation in different populations, I would wrongly assume that this is a disease-causing mutation in Southeast Asian people and a non-disease-causing mutation in Caucasian people. So it's a very subtle level, but we need to know a level of detail, which we can to be able to diagnose properly. I think the population of 2.5 million, that's like the bigger area we look after with our, we have primary care now, secondary care, tertiary care, has about 97 different nationalities and nations in that. So there's that diversity that is then reflected in our data. If you look into the themes in data sciences, there's always a question about overfitting in certain populations, underfitting in other populations, and is the data representative, right? And I think in all of those things, we have been approached, and we are working with wider teams because we can offer that diversity of data and patients.
Absolutely, you have access.
So just a couple of things that I'd add. I mean, I think Suthesh articulated it nicely. Is really that everything that we do, we want to obviously provide opportunities for our local patients to do that with us. But we're really looking at that global impact and these things that affect the population that we treat on a much wider scale. And we collaborate with other countries to do that, and other health and care systems that face different challenges with different populations. But that's really important. I think personally, a passion and motivation is about making sure that the patients that we treat in our patch in North East London have access to these opportunities in an equitable way. And so that's about us making sure that we're reaching out and we're communicating, and that all of our hospitals have the opportunity to be able to deliver these trials. So obviously we have a couple of real centres of excellence within sort of more central London, with the St Bartholomew's and Royal London, which really specialises in things like trauma. But we also have large district general hospitals in the most deprived areas of London, out at Newham, where we're doing fantastic things with research there. And
Yeah.
I'm really keen that we make sure that everything we do is available to everyone.
I'm a big fan of Newham. Okay, so what do you think should be done to improve collaboration among industry, academia, and the National Health Service?
Yeah, so I'll start on that one. I mean, that we could probably talk about this all day. I think for us, it's really important that our collaboration is cross-sector. I think we're very passionate about not having boundaries to to the work that we do, although we're sitting here based kind of across a university and a large NHS trust. We work very much in collaboration with patients, with funders, with regulators, with industry, and all sorts of partners. And I think being able to move agilely across those sectors is really important to us. And then I think there's something about combining the physical infrastructure as well as the sort of digital infrastructure, if you like, with the people and the kind of wider culture. So we are establishing a cluster for life sciences in Whitechapel, and this is a real opportunity to co-locate some of our world-leading experts with our patient cohorts, our hospital facilities, and our university, to really partner with industry and think about new drug pipelines at an early stage, what we're going to need to deliver them, make sure we're ready to deliver them. And then we're also investing in a large inpatient clinical research facility here at the Royal London, which we really see as a North East London wide facility to be able to then offer those new treatments in sort of first in man trials, and be able to deliver that safely in partnership across the patch with other health and care providers. So I think it comes back to, how do we bring all of those fantastic things together, and how do we evolve our leadership model to be able to manage what is a really complex system and navigate that. But really importantly, how do we as leaders lead by example to show that it can be done despite some of the challenges? How do we work together to overcome some of these barriers? And I think you mentioned you mentioned Newham as well, and I think that's a really positive example of where actually the hospital leadership has been really vocal in talking about how important research is, and that itself has made a phenomenal difference, regardless of the infrastructure and the number of nurses and the number of the access to scanners and all sorts of things. That's happening too, but the impact that it has when your leaders are able to articulate clearly what a difference research can make, that for me is what it's all about. So we're trying to move all of the jigsaw pieces together in a way that will make that work, but also really empower that passion and leadership through research as well.
Nice to hear you say that. Thank you. Okay, Suthesh?
Yeah, so I think on top of what Jenny has said is, what is really important to collaborate is actually thinking in a we mentality, because way too often do we think, oh, them at pharma, us at the trust, or we at the university. But actually, if you sit around the table, the core value is the same for everyone. They want to improve healthcare, they want to improve the life of an individual, or they're curious and they want to find something. And I think sitting together and being able to talk, but also having the right framework to be able to talk, I think that's the first thing. The second thing, which, yes, people sometimes when I used to say, oh, I'm at the Royal London, I get a look, oh my God, you work in, Whitechapel in East London. Look, for me, the place I work and the place I pick to work is, where are the opportunities? Where can we improve? And where are people ready to collaborate and start something new? And where are my patients? Because the primary thing, I've had loads of discussions with my mentor about this. I am primary, obviously, I'm a researcher and a scientist, but primary, I'm a doctor. That's what I've always wanted to do. I've wanted to improve my patients' lives. And that is something that we can do very well here, and everybody can agree on. And we have that, at this campus, as Jenny just, I mean, I did my clinic this morning, and then we walked over to the Precision Health Institute, which is across the road, to then do this podcast, right? So there is that interaction.
Okay, all right. What do you think clinical research will look like in 2030? And can you each name one major development that you think will be key, please?
So I think large data will be there. AI, I know people are skeptical about, will be there, and it will be there to be our dishwasher. So it will take away loads of the things that are tedious, don't need a scientist, a nurse, a physio, or a clinician to do, but it will identify much earlier disease, kind of before it's sprung out, and it will identify things of optimizing people's health and preventing disease way quicker than we can do right now. I think that's where the future is.
Okay, Jenny?
Yeah, so I think what we'll see, I mean, 2030 doesn't seem like very far away, but I think what we'll see is, and I hope we'll see, is more collaboration and less competition between specialties, between hospitals, between trusts. I think we've got to work as a system, and we've got to work globally, and we've got to try to break down some of those barriers that I think have been historical in terms of working within sort of professional lanes, if you like, but also some of the drivers of behavior around incentives and metrics. As Suthesh said, there's never going to be enough money to be able to do everything that we need to do, or enough resource, or enough infrastructure. And I think what we'd like to see over the next few years, and by 2030, is much more openness, much more collaboration, just in terms of that leadership style and that culture and that working with our partners that is going to enable us to achieve it. We can't do it as individual organizations. We need to do it as a real collective endeavor with our patients as well.
I want to thank you both very much. That was absolutely excellent. I've really enjoyed listening to both of you. I've enjoyed the insights, and I've learned a few things, which is great. I'm sure everybody will learn something from this.